Morning. Good morning again, class. Hope you enjoyed the review song from a Monday. Today, for new math, it's not really new. A couple of the vocabulary parts are going to be new. So stay with me, just like we've been doing. You guys have been doing fantastic. I have been very complimentary of what you've been doing at home and doing for your work. I have been complimentary of how your parents have been helping you. But for complementary today, it has nothing to do with what I'm talking about right now because it's a math thing. So stay with me on the math vocabulary because it's new. Quick little video, some problems afterwards, just like we've been doing, and it's all good. So, complementary angles are two angles that add up to 90 degrees. We know that 90 degrees is a right angle from what we were doing in class before. Little marker down here symbolizes that it's at a right angle. So if there are complementary angles, like this one for instance would probably be, I don't know, about a 40-degree angle, and this one's going to be a 50-degree angle, they're complementary. Two angles that add up to 90 degrees are complementary. Now what you also got to get used to is not every right angle is going to be drawn perfectly like that. One might be drawn like this. We'll call that a 35-degree angle. And its complementary one might be drawn like this. That always signifies the measurement on the inside. That's what that is right there. So if these two angles are complementary, that's a 35-degree angle. This one's going to be a 55-degree angle. Because if you combine them and put them what's called adjacent to each other, adjacent means next to each other, two angles that add up to 90 degrees. Pretty simple. Two angles that add up to 90 degrees are called complementary. Two angles right next to each other that add up to 90 degrees are called complementary. You with me? Good. Pretty straightforward. If two angles are supplementary, they add up to 180 degrees. Now, if you remember from class, before we left, we were talking briefly that 180 degrees is a straight line. Now, how do you, if you can remember that two 90-degree angles, 90 and 90 make 180. So two angles that are right next to each other make 180 degrees. For instance, I have an angle right here, and I have an angle right here. They are adjacent to each other, which means right next to each other. And if this angle right here is a 60-degree angle, and two angles that are supplementary are 180 degrees, and that's my two angles added together, then this angle right here plus this angle right here have to equal 180 degrees, then this angle would have to be 120 degrees. Two angles next to each other that make 180 degrees are called supplementary. Oh yeah, I was prepared for that. Last thing we're going to talk about is vertical angles. Okay? Vertical angles deal with two angles that are non-adjacent. That means not next to each other. Adjacent, next to each other. Non-adjacent, not next to each other. And it also deals with what's called two intersecting lines. Here are two intersecting lines. Okay? Two intersecting lines. We're going to call this A, B, C, and D, just for now, because there's certain spaces. Vertical angles are not next to each other, but they are identical to each other. They are identical to each other. Meaning, here you have angle A. That's an angle. We're talking about vertical angles. These two angles right here are vertical angles. Remember, tick marks mean they're equal to each other. Vertical angles are identical to each other. They are not next to each other, so they are not adjacent. They are vertical from each other. opposite each other. Now, just like those two angles are vertical, angle A and angle C are equal to each other, well, that also means that angle over here is vertical to this angle over here. Now, they're going to be a different measurement than that one, but these two angles are called vertical angles also, and those two angles are identical. If I told you that this was a 70-degree angle, and I'm telling you that vertical angles have to be identical to each other, then this angle has to be 70 degrees. Yeah? Yeah. Now, if you can see this straight line in here also, in that case, then angle A and angle B are supplementary from the other part that we talked about before, and two supplementary angles have to equal 180 degrees. Well, that means this angle has to equal 110 degrees, because these two angles are supplementary. These two angles are vertical. Now, if that's 110 degrees and these two angles are vertical and these two angles are identical, then this angle must be, John, good, must be 110 degrees also. Okay, that's a little bit more complex than just two. Complementary, two angles equal 90. Supplementary, two angles equal 180. Once we get into vertical angles, okay, two intersecting lines and vertical angles are identical to each other. Some problems on the next page. Ask me if you need help. Boop.